Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are going to be tackling the case for Future Gohan and why heroes don't always win and why it's much darker than you think. And guys, the Dragon Ball franchise has been built on second chances, has been built on hope. When our heroes fall, when Vegeta or Goku falls, or when Gohan falls, usually the Dragon Balls bring them back. We've seen it countless times. And when the odds seem impossible, usually we have a sudden transformation. Super Saiyan 2 during the Cell games, we have a fusion, the Potara earrings, the fusion dance, and all of this ignites hope. But we are going to be venturing beyond this familiar comfort we've been accustomed to in Dragon Ball into a future or every safety net disappear. And guys, this future is so dark that they made a whole movie about it. So imagine a world where Goku's heart virus claims him before he can save the day. Or a world where you have androids, namely 17 and 18, just completely destroy cities, they leave burning cities to the ground, and their ruins to their wake. Their rampage goes unchecked, and there's no Dragon Balls to fix any of the damage that they did. There's no crowds to cheer on for Trunks, for Gotenks, for Goku, for Vegeta, or even Hercules. There's no triumphant hero to come save the day. Just the faint echo of what used to be a great city and a great planet, but it's not that anymore. And at the very center of this desolation stands in Future Gohan. Who Future Gohan, we know from his life and from our past video that he has one of the most traumatic life probably in all of TV show history. We can quickly go back to the death of his friends during the Frieza saga, his failures during the Saiyan saga, his failures during the Cell saga, the death of his father. During the Buu saga, when he got absorbed, he failed Gotenks, he failed the whole planet. Just countless failures, one after the other. And we've done a deep analysis about it, why he's the most misunderstood hero. But in this timeline, Future Gohan is missing one arm. His spirit is slowly dying. And by the years of hopeless battle, in a universe where the words are, we can still do this, this does not apply to Gohan. There's no we and there's no can do this. Doesn't exist. The androids have destroyed everything. And in that world, usually we are going to fight together. We can do this. They usually meant something. But in this, imagine guys, it means nothing. There are just words. There is no hope. There is no light at the end of the tunnel. There is no promise of rescue. He fights alone. What was once, especially for a Saiyan, a symbol of boundless potential, it is now just a solitary warrior stepping into his inevitable doom. He just comes into an unwinnable fight, and he's just gonna die. And this is really the darkest corner of Dragon Ball, a place where victory isn't guaranteed. And heroism can crumble under the weight of under a merciless reality where androids come in, they beat you so bad that they kill Vegeta, they kill Krillin, they kill Yamcha, they kill Tien, they killed the person who's supposed to be Gohan's uncle or his second father in Piccolo. There's no one left for him. They break off his arm. He's left with one arm. So this place really exposes you to the raw, unbreakable truth that sometimes there is no happy ending, guys. No matter how brave or how strong you are still going to lose. And this is something that we are not accustomed to at all in Dragon Ball. But in this timeline, it is made very clear. And in this video, guys, we're going to be tearing open the heart of future Gohan's story, a story that remains overshadowed really by the endless triumphs of the present timeline where Teen Gohan is able to beat Cell. Goku comes back to life. Vegeta sacrifices himself, lets go of his evil ways, and comes back to life. Vegeta is born. Gotenks is born. Gohan fulfills his prophecy by becoming Beast Gohan. There's so many triumphs in the current timeline, but in this one, we will uncover the permanent scars and the butterfly effect that it had on future Trunks and on the rest of the timeline. This had, guys, really an agonizing question. It leads us to an agonizing question to whether was it really Goku and Vegeta's choices that led to this horrific timeline? I'm about to really hit in a controversial opinion and a point that we have not touched yet. So I hope you're ready to confront the idea that heroes don't always stand victorious and that some wounds can never be undone. And I'll need you to stay with me because once you see just how grim and dark this future truly is, I don't think you'll ever be able to look at Dragon Ball, anime, TV show, or movie the same way again. So now that we've glimpsed into the harsh reality of this future and the future of future Gohan, where every safety net is ripped away, there is nothing left. We just broke the Dragon Ball Z formula. There's no one here to save anyone. It's just him and Trunks. So in our main timeline, Gohan grows up with legendary warriors. He has a bunch of second chances. He has the Dragon Balls. He has Piccolo, his mentor. He's able to transform to finally reach and fulfill his destiny, his prophecy, to be the guardian of the earth, to be the savior of the earth, by finally fulfilling Beast Gohan, defeating Cell Max, by being this amazing warrior that we know of, reaching Mystic Gohan, fighting in the Tournament of Power, all of this. But in this doomed future, he has none of those luxuries. His arc is the bleak revelation that even really the bravest souls can meet a crushing defeat when fate offers no chance. So I'm going to dive into the point why heroes don't always win, and especially future Gohan. So in this dismal future, Goku is dead. He was claimed by a heart virus. Tough luck. I mean, there's nothing he can do about it. And before he can save the planet, Goku passes away. So Goku passes away, but we still have the brave Saiyan warrior, my favorite character in this series. We still have Vegeta, who finally achieves Super Saiyan. Finally, and he reclaims the throne of the strongest fighter in the universe. And with Goku gone, the entire Z roster is still there. We have Vegeta, we have Krillin, we have Yamcha, Tien, Piccolo, all of them. But comes Android 17 and 18. And just like in the present timeline, Vegeta gets completely whooped by the androids. However, there's a small and subtle difference that we need to keep in mind. In the present timeline, who absolutely cooks Vegeta? It's Android 18. In the future timeline, it's Android 17. So there's a little contrast there. And in the future timeline, Android 18 kills Piccolo. Android 17 kills Vegeta. In the present timeline, Android 18 cooks Vegeta. And Android 17 fights Piccolo. So in the future timeline, we'll lose Vegeta, Piccolo, Tien, everyone. And what happens to the Dragon Balls? Well, because Piccolo dies, they vanish, and there's no more Dragon Balls. There's no more hope. So there's no chance at a wish to put things right. That leaves us with one last defender that we know of, and that's future Gohan. But there's someone else that comes into the picture. His prodigy, Trunks. Mainly future Trunks. But imagine a world, well, you've seen countless times in Dragon Ball. We've seen it in the past sagas. We've seen it in the future sagas. We have safety nets. We have the Supreme Kai. We have the Gods of Destruction. Ironically, we have the King Kai. We have Goku. But this time, none of it. No second chances, no resurrection, just a lone warrior and his prodigy, his younger brother, we can call him, that he has to save. They go through this life of desolation, misery, destruction together. And usually when you look at the movie of Future Gohan, when you look at the manga, you see that Future Gohan fights with one arm. He mentors Trunks while trying to survive and fighting the androids. And it's all grim, guys. The whole environment is grim. There is not a shed of hope. And yet, from the moment we first see him in this timeline, Future Gohan, there is an unsettling truth hanging in the air. We have the feeling that Gohan is doomed. And the storyline in this movie and in this timeline is that it's not a triumphant one. It's one with a downward spiral. That's what makes it really bleak, guys. And that's why it's really darker than it actually is. And it's not the hero's tale that we know of. It's grimmer than this. There's no last minute savior. In Dragon Ball Z, there's always a last minute savior. We can see it throughout the timelines that we have Teen Gohan himself, who eventually transforms to Super Saiyan 2. Guys, he's able to fight his demons, his PTSD, his trauma. He's able to fight those and transform and conquer his shadow. And in that timeline, his final stand is against the androids. It's a one-sided massacre. Sometimes he has his moments, but he's not able to go Super Saiyan 2. He doesn't receive a Zenkai boost. He's just outmatched. One hand. That's it. And how does he die? How does he die, guys? This is what's crazy. How does Gohan die? And how does Future Trunks find Gohan? And this is a point we're going to tackle on after this one. The psychological effect, the psychological trauma, and the butterfly effect they had on Trunks, his trauma, his psychology, and the present timeline. There's a whole science and butterfly effect we see from it. And I'll go deeper into it. But how does Trunks find Gohan? He finds him face down, one arm, not in a Super Saiyan form, dead. Finds him dead in the rain, completely dark. There's nothing more grim than this. There's no poetic justice in this. It's completely the opposite that we see. And what happened right before that? Gohan told Trunks, let's go fight the androids. Because Trunks told him, I can do it. I can fight him. Let me come and help you. As any Saiyan would want. As we've seen throughout Dragon Ball Z, no Saiyan wants to stay on the sidelines. From the most goofier ones, Gotenks, to Goku, to even Piccolo and Vegeta, they never want to stand on the sidelines. They all want to go and fight. And Trunks said, let me go. Let me do it. And he got upset at Gohan. And Gohan knew that he wasn't strong enough. So he knocks him out Vegeta style, like he did against Kid Trunks. He knocks him out so he can stay here. And he leaves Trunks with one last message, that the future is in his hands. Not in the current generation, which is Future Gohan, alone. So Trunks finds him dead after being knocked out by his mentor and his friend. He finds his everything, his best friend, his brother, his mentor, dead on the rain, killed by those filthy androids. And then we have the most iconic transformation we see, the most dark transformation we see, the most grim transformation is the Super Saiyan 1 transformation of Trunks, which, if there was one transformation that would reflect all of Dragon Ball Z and the definition of being a Super Saiyan, it would be this one. The one that Trunks injures while he finds Gohan, where you can see the blood going from his hands. We can see when Trunks transforms, he finally hits the ground. The whole ground shakes. That's a definition and the meaning of his power that he finally gains from living through this horrific incident. And after this transformation, guys, there's no team support at all. Trunks is left alone. And picture how many times in Dragon Ball Z we've seen people helping other characters to win. Even Teen Gohan, who was who had this amazing transformation. He became Super Saiyan 2. There was hope in the world. Vegeta, Yamcha, Tien, and Piccolo had to come and help to defeat those androids, those same people that died in the future timeline to those androids. Can you imagine? So we're accustomed to this, but in this timeline, everyone's gone. There's no sense of being. It's just Gohan alone. And when he fails, Earth fails him. Trunks is not able to pick up. No one is able to, and that's just the horrifying reality of a world where all the major heroes have been wiped out, and Trunks is forced to move on to the present timeline and call in for Goku and Vegeta's help, and to warn them of the androids because he had heard from Bulma the story of the great Goku and the great Vegeta, who represents hope in this timeline, not the one in Trunks' timeline. But he eventually comes back and defeats Cell, and he doesn't waste any time. He just beats him to a pulp, destroys the android, and what does he see at the end? To really emphasize this point, this is for Gohan when he eliminates Android 18. So finally, there's this butterfly effect that ripples through time. Trunks, still a teenager, watches Gohan die and realizes that he has to do something drastic, or else humanity is basically finished, but he and Bulma and the rest of the humans will be completely eradicated. And this devastation fuels him to travel back in time and warn Goku and alter the main timeline. It's almost a paradox, guys, when you think about it. Gohan's catastrophic failure and his death in one timeline ends up saving the other, where he becomes the savior of that timeline. So in this twisted stance, future Gohan's death is very grim, very dark. It is the spark that ensures that the main Dragon Ball Z timeline can survive, and Gohan fulfills his prophecy and becomes the hero of that timeline, which he was supposed to be in the future timeline. That's very ironic, but it's a very tragic irony. So I really want to emphasize the point before we move on to the psychological aspect of Trunks, that heroes don't always win. And this is made clear in this timeline. Future Gohan lives and dies by the sword. He lives and dies by the statement. He embodies the bleak possibility that heroic determination alone is not enough, and it can fail miserably. There's no savior that can comfort you, and there's no cheerful ending for him. No Dragon Ball wish to bail him out. His story ends in blood, rain, with one arm, and in regret. This is the darkest side of Dragon Ball, the place where even the pure-hearted warriors can lose everything and never come back. This is the scene where it makes grown men cry. And that's what makes it darker than we think. Dragon Ball Z fans, you and I are all used to victory, to Goku pulling it off, to Vegeta pulling it off, to Gohan pulling it off, or to pulling off a miraculous transformation or a fusion. And we're used to second chances. Oh, Boo killed all of the Earth. Well, whatever. We'll just revive everyone. And we're used to celebrating a new dawn after the villain is vanquished and he vanishes. But future Gohan shows us and teaches us that what happens when all those lifelines are yanked away? Desolation. His sacrifice is permanent. There's no resurrection, no instant fix, no transformation, no savior. And Dragon Ball Z, it's famous for rewriting destiny and timelines time and time again. But Gohan's death stands as a chilling exception. So that's the heartbreaking reality of future Gohan and his final stand, and that's the disturbing message that it sends. And this disturbing message that it sends has a psychological aftermath on Trunks and the past timeline, which we know as the present timeline. The failure of Gohan leaves a scar on future Trunks forever, on his timeline and beyond. So if you thought that future Gohan's end is grim, Wait until you see what it does to a young Saiyan and the only Saiyan left behind in his timeline. So we're going to move on to something a little deeper. And we're going to do a psychological analysis on the toll of losing Future Gohan that it had on Trunks. Because yes, Future Gohan's death is tragic in its own right. But what makes it so dark is not only the appearance of his death, the transformation of Trunks, it's the lasting impact that it has on him, his outlook, his actions, and ultimately his mental state and transformations are all pushed and fueled by this. So there's two theories that really explain what happens in Trunks' life. One being the existential anxiety and meaning making, more defined as nihilism, which was a term iconed by Nietzsche. And the other one, which we famously call now PTSD, and that's a 20th century renaming that we have, but it is actually called survivor's guilt. And this term was coined by this doctor called William G. Niederland. And he introduced this term because in the Holocaust, when the survivors left and they said, "Oh, we're free," they had a feeling of punishment that many of the Holocaust survivors felt, and they said, "Well, my friends died, and my loved one died," and they felt bad, and it was a traumatic event for all of them. So I started with point number one. Existential psychology basically says that as humans, we're stuck grappling with some terrifying realities, and we will always be stuck grappling with those terrifying realities for all of our life because we're just mere mortals. We're ultimately alone in our heads. It's me, myself, and I. The universe doesn't hand us a prepackaged purpose. We have to find this purpose on our own, and some people don't find this purpose and go down a very tragic path. And like it or not, we're totally free to choose, but we must bear the responsibility for our actions and for those choices. And this can create a special kind of anxiety that's less about fear of a specific thing, but more about a deep discomfort by existing in a seemingly indifferent universe where everything is so bleak and dark. And it's all about the big, scary realities of being a human. But in this case, it's of being a half-breed human Saiyan. Like the fact that we all die, we also have all the freedom and responsibility of our choice. So to cope, what do? We try to create or discover meaning, and either through personal relationships, through missions, which is really going to be the goal and the point for Trunks, and through values that gives our lives purpose. So let's apply this to future Trunks. In Trunks' timeline, everything is bleak. Everything is death. Everything is dark. Everything is over. And the androids roam around destroying cities. They destroy everything they see. They're even worse than the androids that we know from the present timeline or the past timeline, however you want to call it. But for the sake being, I'll call it the present timeline. And they're killing people at will. There's no order. There's no safety net. And there's very little hope, if any, because he tried fighting them. And every time he fights them, he loses. He gets completely destroyed. And it's like the whole world was swallowed by this existential nihilism that is the androids. And after, an even worse android comes, and this is Cell. And everything feels so random and meaningless. So there's a reason we call it the most dark timeline. It's dark for us as humans. I can't imagine for someone who lost his only one and his best friend, and seeing the way he died must have been tragic. And for a kid like Trunks, growing up in fear, with no father, his father was killed very tragically. He had no chance. and no guarantee that tomorrow even exists, those existential realities become brutally real, and they became so real that they triggered the most iconic Super Saiyan 1 transformation that goes unnoticed throughout the whole saga. Death for future Trunks, it's everywhere. He's surrounded by it, his own friends, his loved ones, his family, his mentor, his so-called brother. They're all gone, and they're gone in terrific ways. Does he have freedom and responsibility? He has freedom. He has responsibility, but there's no freedom. His only freedom is the crueling responsibility that he has to defeat those androids and save his only loved ones, Bulma. He's practically the last line of defense for humanity. Is he isolated? Yes. He's got Bulma, but no one can really grasp the burden that he carries by seeing Future Gohan die like this and seeing Vegeta die like this. We see it, that when he sees Vegeta for the first time, he says, "Father, this is you." And he's so amazed by it because he did reach the legendary Super Saiyan transformation. He did become the strongest being in the universe. And he is amazed by it. So we can see that isolation takes effect when he goes back into the past. Does he have a sense of meaning? He doesn't have a sense of meaning. His only meaning is to try to defeat those androids, but he can't even do that. He's not strong enough. So the androids' actions are just mindless destructions, no reason, no plan. It's not like it was Zamasu. It's not like it was Babidi. It's not like it was Cell. Cell wanted to absorb those androids. Those androids had no plan. It was just violence. So to Trunks, that must feel like he's living in something that is really a joke. I mean, you can't imagine a child living through this. You're like, if you're a child, there must be something else for this world, not for him. So Trunks responds to this nihilistic world by forging his own sense of purpose, saving the timeline. So how does he want to do that? He goes back into the past. He travels back to warn Goku, "Hey buddy, you're gonna die of a virus." And we can see the effect that those androids had on him, because he eventually defeats Mecha Frieza, the reconstructed version of Frieza, with no problem at all. He just destroys him in 2 seconds, and then he destroys King Cold the same way. So then he travels back to warn Goku and fights relentlessly to try to stop the androids and Cell. He knows that there's no second chances, and it's really evident by from the time he arrives in the past to the time he leaves. So he arrives, he warns Goku that there's no chance. He goes straight to Goku because he's heard so many great stories about him. He then finds that the androids on this timeline are not actually the androids that he has seen in the past. It's Android 19 and Android 20, Dr. Giro. And he's like, what? This can't be true. And then it's just a complete shattering of his reality. You can see that when they want to go into the cave where Dr. Giro grows those androids and grows Cell, Trunks just snaps. And he powers up to Super Saiyan and tries to blast through this cave, say, "We're not going to revive none of those androids. Nothing. I've seen the death that it causes in my timeline. I've seen what it does. I will not let you do this. I don't care if it's Goku or Vegeta or my father." This trauma overtook him. And then we see that when his father gets completely destroyed by Android 18, it was a reminder of what happened to his father against Android 17. And he jumps into the fight, tries to fight Android 18. They both get completely destroyed. Completely. They absolutely have no chance. And this awakens his trauma that he saw in his future timeline. So that forces both of them, him and Vegeta, to finally train into the hyperbolic time chamber. And that's what eventually saves Trunks in his future timeline. But they come out of the hyperbolic time chamber as the strongest and most powerful beings in the universe. They are stronger than 17, they're stronger than 18, they're stronger than Cell's second form, they're stronger than Cell's first form, stronger than Goku and Gohan, stronger than all of them. And that goes to Vegeta's head. They eventually fight Cell's second form. It's a piece of cake for Vegeta. But we can see that as Vegeta's winning the fight, Trunks senses something. He senses that Vegeta is toying with Cell. He senses that he wants to use this toy that is his newfound power. And Vegeta is about to let Cell go and make him absorb 18. But he can't just sit back and watch. He can't. He chooses a heroic set of values and he lives by them. This is the meaning and the making in action. I mean, we can see it. Trunks says, I've seen it all my life. I've seen the terror, the death that it caused. I can't let you let Cell become perfect. There's no way. There's an existential despair that hits Trunks. He says, I don't care if you're my father. It even surprised Vegeta. And I couldn't even say it made him proud when he beamed him away and he fought Cell, fought Vegeta at the same time. He tried to hide the androids all at the same time. You can see the desperation in Trunks. He desperately needs everyone to understand how real the danger is because Vegeta doesn't. He doesn't. Trunks has lived through it and he makes it very clear. And if they don't, then all his suffering, all Gohan's sacrifice will be for nothing. And that's the worst nightmare for someone clinging to a self-made purpose. He also experiences a brief existential crisis in a scenario where his intentions are labeled as evil. This is where we jump to Dragon Ball Super. Zamasu comes in the Goku Black arc and tells him that you are evil. You are evil. Your actions are evil. You play with time. You fuse. You guys are just mere mortals. And you do those actions of a god. And then Zamasu calls Trunks out. He cannot defeat Goku Black in his timeline. He cannot defeat Zamasu in the future timeline. In the present timeline. So even if his heroic actions are seen as bad, he snaps and he says, what's the point? What's the point? And he becomes Super Saiyan Rage. So he says to Zamasu, fine. You tell me my actions are evil, but then that's what I'll be. And this is an outburst of the existential rage that finally comes out. He finally comes out when he becomes Super Saiyan Rage, his own unique transformation that no one else in the series has but him. But in reality, it's much darker than this. He's just fighting back against the void that he has inside of him that keeps threatening him to swallow his purpose. So Future Trunks is not just a PTSD case. He's battling an existential dread. And that bleak worldview that he has is a direct result of Future Gohan's timeline and his death and the bleak and grim environment that he grew up with. And it's a future where heroes were lost and a world where chaos wins and it's merciless. So when Future Gohan fails, it's not merely a personal tragedy. It kickstarts an entire chain of hopelessness. We can see it in his actions against the androids. We can really see it in his actions against Zamasu, that he finally transformed into Super Saiyan Rage. He realizes no one can save him from this and dark, evil God. It's not Vegeta that can do it. It's not Goku that can do it. It's not Vegeta that can do it. It's him who has to do it. And he finally fulfills and defeats this void that he has inside of him by confronting the nihilism head on. Because the darkness isn't just what got the planet destroyed. It's that Trunks had to fight to construct meaning in a place where there was no meaning. It was him, Mai, and Bulma. And this is an existential weight that none of the Dragon Ball cast never has to face. we can say that Gohan has a similar traumatic life, but that existential weight is something that only Trunks can say he lived through. So then, Trunks also is an image of the survival guilt and the burden of responsibility. So the survival guilt happens when you make it out of a tragedy that no one else does, and a tragedy that someone else, often more deserving or more capable, did not survive. Future Future Gohan was more capable. He didn't deserve to die, not at all. I mean, I don't think there's any human here that's going to debate that Future Gohan deserved to die. And you feel shame or guilt for living. Trunks did that in the future timeline. And it can drive you to prove you that you deserve that life. You deserve it. And not only do you deserve it, but everyone else who survived deserves it. So there's few characters in the Dragon Ball Saga that really exemplify the survivor's guilt. And he's literally the survivor in a world where almost every fighter has died. That's literal. That's not an exaggeration. And more specifically, his mentor, Future Gohan, died a horrible death protecting him. Gohan was the stronger warrior than him. He was the strongest human warrior left at the time, human and Saiyan warrior left at the time. He was the one who had all the potential, and he was Trunks' brother. Yet Trunks is the one who outlives him. Can you imagine that? The weaker one outlives him. The stronger one sacrificed himself for him. And that set Trunks up for a huge, huge emotional burden. The guilt of not being strong enough. He was just a kid. He was just a kid. But that doesn't erase that I should have done more. He wanted to do more. He tried to do more, but he couldn't do more. He tried to say, hey, Gohan, let me fight with you. But Gohan said, nah, you're the future. You're going to find a way to do this. I have faith in you. And he knocks him out and eventually dies. And Trunks has a need to honor Gohan's sacrifice. Every day he lives, Trunks feels obligated to make that survival worth it every day. That's why he trains relentlessly in the hyperbolic time travel. That's why he trains to finally defeat those androids and refuses to let the androids continue their wrath in the past timeline. Gohan has the mindset of I must protect everyone. He's hyper vigilant, zero tolerance. We can see that when he fights Cell, he comes back into his timeline. He eliminates the android and he doesn't mess around with Cell first form. He talks to him for 2 minutes and says, it's over, Cell. The nightmare is over. Goodbye. And in his mind, if he hesitates, people will die and that guilt would double. And this is exactly why you see him pleading with Vegeta, pleading to not let Cell achieve perfection. He's traumatized by the idea of an even more powerful monster than the one he's lived through. And Vegeta does not listen to him. So, Trunks is carrying this immense responsibility to the Zamasu arc. He has a feeling that he has to save his timeline because he did. He saved his timeline. He even defeats Boo. But everyone's deaths in this timeline are still upon his shoulders. That's the guilt that he has. Even when the situation is basically unwinnable, Trunks needs to fight on, and often blaming himself for when things go wrong, especially against Zamasu. But eventually, against Zamasu, he embraces his evil side. This is why he's able to defeat him finally. So, the survival guilt turns Trunks into a darker, more serious character that we usually see in Dragon Ball. He cannot be carefree like Goku. He cannot be as prideful as Vegeta because he has this unspoken debt to a deceased mentor and a destroyed world that is not your typical hero's journey. This is a hero being forged under the weight of a deep rooted guilt and responsibility that will never truly fade. And why does this amplify the darkness of Future Gohan's failure and of his timeline? Because if Future Gohan had survived, Trunks wouldn't be the last Saiyan in his timeline, and he might not carry this enormous guilt. Hopefully, he was able to have babies with Mai, but we'll see. Gohan's death doesn't just mean losing a hero, it means losing a brother. It means Trunks bears the guilt of the survival. He bears it on his chest and he hides away from it. He's haunted by it. Why him and not me? Why Gohan? Why did you have to die? I was the weaker one. And that's a heavy mental load. And that rewires how he approaches every battle, every threat, and every relationship. We can see that when he leaves the timeline after defeating Zamasu, when he goes into his ship with Mai, he says, he cries to Gohan. He tells him how Gohan is finally happy. And that's was such a stark realization because in his timeline, Gohan was a warrior. But he sees Gohan finally as a scholar. He sees him. He's like, you're so weak compared to how you were before. But this is exactly what I wanted to be. And this is what you became. And he finally takes wipes his tears away. And he says that, goodbye, Gohan. He says bye to his mentor. And you can see that when he takes on into this ship with Mai, the only ones that fly to him are Piccolo and Gohan, because there is this deep-rooted connection between both of them that no one has. Only him and Gohan will understand. Even though future Gohan doesn't know past Gohan, there's this mystical relationship that they have between each other that will always carry on forever. And this is what makes the ending really of Dragon Ball Super and the Zamasu arc. Yes, it's a bit of a sweet and sour ending because he finally defeats Zamasu and goes back to his timeline. He knows that what he has to do to defeat all the evils in his world, because he cannot go back and always depend on Vegeta and Goku. But he realizes that finally Gohan is happy. And happy not for the reasons he thought he would be happy, for the complete opposite. And this is what truly makes future Gohan's failure, the failure of Trunks, and future Gohan's death even more dark than it truly is, because it has ripple effects all the way to the Zamasu arc. So together, these forces really make future Trunks a far more tragic and complex hero than your average character. While Goku and his friends in the main timeline enjoy repeated wins and resurrections for that fact, Trunks lives in a reality where the big heroes are lost. There's no do-overs, there's no Dragon Balls, and there's no magical fixes. The psychological scars run deep, and that's precisely why the story is so much darker than we often acknowledge. Finally, and this will wrap up why this entire scenario and the demise of future Gohan, the existential battle of Trunks, and the bleakness and the chaos of that timeline shows us that sometimes in Dragon Ball and life and the anime, heroes don't always win, and the aftershocks of that loss are a lot darker than we think. We've went into detail as to the butterfly effects it had, but we've seen how future Gohan's downfall sets a grim precedent. How a lone hero can fail outright. The lone wolf doesn't always win. And we've explored the devastating impact of that loss on the psyche on Trunks, future Trunks more precisely. But there's still why that's that one final piece of the puzzle that we have to complete. It's why is this even darker than we all realize? And we'll dive deep into the permanent scars and the twisted nature of this type of heroism when there's no safety net. And then the uncomfortable question comes to all of us. Could this have been avoided? This is a permanent scar, not just a temporary loss. One of the hallmark and features of Dragon Ball Z is that tragedies often get fixed. Someone dies, but Dragon Balls brings them back. Another threat emerges, Goku comes back stronger and saves him. The almighty Goku. Not in this future. Gohan stays dead forever. There's no closure for Trunks. There's no I wish Trunks was alive. I wish Gohan was alive. I wish Goku was alive. There's none of this because that wish can never happen. So there's no closure for Trunks in his timeline. He can't just gather the Dragon Balls. There's nothing else. He can't bring back his mentor back to life. Instead, Gohan's sacrifice lingers, and he has to bury Gohan, and it's an unhealed wound, motivating and haunting Trunks for the rest of his life. In other words, his world never resets. He's condemned to carry the pain forever. And it will always be, and it will be a powerful reminder, a tattoo on his heart, in his chest, that he carries in, not proudly, I would say, that he tries to hide from the world, that in his timeline, there's no miracle or do-over. It's permanent. And heroism is a double-edged sword. Future Gohan's stance is that he fights alone, relentlessly, to protect everyone left. And he tries to groom Gohan to be the savior, just like Goku did with past Gohan or present Gohan in his timeline. It's commendable, right? But it also cuts him off emotionally. We don't usually see the comedic banter between both of them, between Goku and Gohan, between Trunks and Vegeta, between Goten and Trunks, between this. We don't see it in this world. We don't see the positivity of Goku. We don't see the pridefulness of Vegeta. As a result, Trunks inherits a blueprint of heroism that is deeply traumatic, where solitude, lethal efficiency, and minimal mercy becomes the norm. It's a very Vegeta-like approach. It's really a nature approach, a purely Saiyan approach that he has. It's an approach that saves lives in the short term, for sure, because he's able to eliminate evil before it does too much chaos. But it's mentally grueling. And future Trunks grows up believing that heroism equals loneliness, equals ruthlessness, equals do or die, no second chances. And that's a far cry from what we see in Dragon Ball. And I have to come up with a more controversial opinion that might not please everyone, guys. But I think that there's an unspoken responsibility of Goku and Vegeta and that timeline. And let me explain it to you why. Why does Goku sacrifice himself in the past? When Cell's second form is about to blow up, he tells Gohan, take care of your mother, take care of everyone. You have all the power you need in the world. You don't need me anymore. Goodbye. And why does he not want to be brought back to life? It's because he cannot be the savior of the earth. Earthlings need to save Earth. It cannot just be him. But could future Gohan's demise have been prevented if Goku and Vegeta were more proactive and took different actions before the heart virus struck or before they fell to the androids? But in future Gohan's world, being complacent like this and being uncaring like this gets magnified into a global catastrophe that finally hits Goku and Vegeta permanently. The reliance on miracle leads to death. The reliance on Dragon Balls and transformation leads to death. And that would have not happened if Goku and Vegeta said, look, Gohan, Trunks, you guys are the savior of the earth. You guys are the Earthlings. Not us. Not our fusion. Nothing else. Not the Supreme Kai. You guys have to focus on saving Earth. And if Trunks and Gohan were more ready against the androids, that would have never happened. Yes, Vegeta and Goku might have died, but Gohan and Trunks would have had all the tools necessary to defeat both of these androids and Cell as well. So that small oversight triggered a chain reaction where it just equaled into a colossal tragedy. So, is it fair to say that Goku and Vegeta were partially at fault? I would say so, because we see that Vegeta reached Super Saiyan. We see that in the past timelines, in the present timeline, he trains Kid Trunks. Goku trains Gohan when he's a kid and when he's a teenager. He even trains Goten. So it might be uncomfortable for all of us to say that, but it's a grim possibility that their normal approach of train, wait, and let this crisis happen and we'll figure it out, then overcome it, this time, in this timeline, completely backfired. When there's no Goku left to overcome it, no one was left to defeat it. So, when we say heroes don't always win, it's not just a flashy phrase, it's a cold reality that is made real in front of our eyes. We see it embodied in Future Gohan's story. The timeline is unforgiving. He dies, and that death is permanent. The man meant to carry the torch and his legacy, and the legacy of Saiyans. His hope is snuffed out, leaving Trunks with a lifetime of trauma and zero guarantees that he can stop any new threat. There's no guarantee. It's him and him alone. And this fallout from the tragedy is profound. Trunks becomes a harder, more battle-worn protector. That's the upside. He gets things done. He kills those evil monsters. Boo. Cell. But what's so grim about it is that he never truly escapes the pain of losing his mentor or living with the fear that it could happen again. And it did happen again. That's what makes it so dark. But there's always an upside, is that eventually he's able to defeat this fear. He realizes that he cannot rely on anyone else. After defeating Zamasu, the Earthlings have to defeat the evildoers on Earth. But this is exactly what makes it so dark, that this emotional weight lingers long after that final blow was struck. And that, my friends, is why Future Gohan's story is even darker than we initially think. It leaves a permanent scar on the timeline and on Trunks that never fully heals. Trunks conquers it, but it will always remain as part of his story and as part of his life. We see it every single time when he sees Gohan, when he sees Vegeta and Goku, when he even sees Krillin and he's married to Android 18. We see that he wants to go and fight Android 18. We see that when Trunks comes back to the future, to the past actually, he goes back to the past. He meets Goku, the trauma of Goku Black. He wants to fight Goku right away. So that permanent scar never truly heals. It's an isolated form of heroism that is passed down to Trunks. And we can potentially also blame Goku and Trunks for it, for their half measure of wait, train, believe that we're going to beat him. And it's a sobering reminder that maybe every victory depends on every fragile condition and decision that we do. Take all of this together, and you realize that in Future Trunks' timeline, it's not just a sad footnote that we eventually overcome. It's a genuine nightmare, a reality that stands as a warning. If any piece of the puzzle fails, even the bravest heroes can fall. But let me ask you this question. If your world offered you no second chances, no magical resets, would you be able to find the strength when hope seems impossible, or with the weight of one of the darkest moments in the world break you forever?